The year is 1936. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is President of the United States. The United States for the past decade has been in the grips of the Great Depression. The economy is barely limping along, and the people want change. This is the perfect recipe for a revolution. March 12th, 9 a.m., German time. Field Marshal August von Mackenstein leads a coup against Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party. The military splits. The older members of the party sides with Marshal August von Mackenstein, whereas the younger members side with the Nazis. The German military junta occupies West Germany, the Nazis in the east. Over the course of the next year, Germany will rip itself apart. In the end, the German military junta will seize power, exiling many Nazis, many of whom will end up in the United States in the following months and years. In East Africa, Benito Mussolini fights a hellish war in Ethiopia, ruling over his country with an iron fist. In the Far East, Japan, a military dictatorship, prepares itself for its invasion of China. September 5th, 1936, East Coast, United States. 8 divisions of Free Guard units are deployed to help with the influx of refugees from Germany. Thousands arrive by boat to Virginia, Maryland, and New York. This influx has further destabilized the already unstable area, with the governor of Virginia saying, quote, "At this time, how can we, United States, expect to help those of a far-off war if we can't even feed our own people? We have neither the jobs, food, nor the money to help, yet the president insists on helping." One notable unit deployed at this time was the newly formed 8th Free Guard Unit, also known as the 8th Skull Unit, mainly consisting of German-American soldiers, most of whom who had family fleeing from the war to America. The skull on the unit's insignia was a reference to the skull worn by SS Nazi members. On November 3rd, 8 more divisions of Free Guard units were deployed to help further stabilize the area as more and more refugees arrived. 5 days later, on November 8th, 1936, as the election for presidential office wraps up, it is clear to all that the Republican candidate, Alf Landon, has won, beating former President FDR. His policies of preventing more refugees is a popular one among the people. He officially enters office on the 9th, becoming the 33rd President of the United States. On February 25th, Alf Landon passes the Gold Standard Act, putting the US dollar back on the gold standard. On February 26th, Alf Landon sends a new bill to Congress. This bill was called the America First Act. This act would have opened the door for the United States President to enforce trade sanctions, closing the border, and war without the approval of Congress. To many, this was not a good sign, and had the circumstances been different, the act would have not passed. But with rising tensions and a crisis at home, on May 5th, the bill passed. Following the bill, Alf Landon would use his new executive powers to begin fixing the economy. Within a few months, the economy was doing better and his approval ratings were up. On August 24th, this would all take a turn for the worst. In an attempt to take greater steps towards economic recovery, the president allied with the Silver Shirts to achieve this goal. The Silver Shirts was a group of right-wingers bent on having America restored to its former glory and power. The Silver Shirts had gained many new members from the German refugees that had come over. Many of the refugees were in fact Nazis fleeing from Germany and looking for a place to set up a new base of operations, seeing the silver shirts as a way to spread fascism and as a possible way to reclaim Germany. On September 15th, 8 a.m., a few thousand protesters stand in front of the Capitol building, demanding that the government remove themselves from the silver shirts. President Alf Landon refused to comment on the situation. What followed for the next few months were peaceful protests with a few exemptions all over the country. Following this, 34 Free Guard divisions were deployed all over the country to protect government buildings and to restore order in some cities. By March 12, 1939, things had only escalated, with the 10 Million March. All across the country, the regular protests against the policies of President Alf Landon have only grown in size, now regularly topping several million protesters. Today, more than 1 million marches through the streets of Washington, D.C., with similar numbers reported in at least 9 other locations. This isn't even accounting for the smaller marches in state capitals and smaller cities, which still pulled in thousands of people each, with some topping hundreds of thousands. The protests come after a series of unpopular policy decisions by the administration, which the organizers claim undermine the very democratic fabric of the republic. Previously, the protesters demanded that the president distance himself from more radical ideologies. They have now come to demand his immediate removal from office. With increasing tensions and civil unrest, 16 more Free Guard divisions are deployed to key cities to help stabilize the situation. On May 4th, mass strikes began all across the United States, all of whom demand for the immediate resignation of Alf Landon. A slogan that had begun to crop up in these strikes was "Down with Adolf Landon," referring to the Adolf Hitler who had ruled Germany for a few years as dictator before being toppled in the German Civil War. On September 5th, 1939, the city of Boston, a fight had broken out between a brigade of Free Guards and civilians. The civilians had attempted to rush the state building of Boston to remove the pro-Alf Landon governor. The guardsmen held their ground for around 16 hours before being overrun. The governor was killed along with any guardsmen that were captured. By 2 a.m., the news had spread to the surrounding cities. The people in those cities did the same as in Boston, rising up and removing those in charge. By 8 a.m., all of New England, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut had fallen to the Boston Rebellion. Hearing the news of the rebellion, Alf Landon sent out the call to mobilize the armed forces. However, much of the standing army had deserted to join the rebellion, leaving Alf Landon with only 24 divisions of Free Guards and 54 other divisions of public volunteers, reservists, and National Guardsmen. On September 9th, the West Coast seceded and joined the Boston Rebellion, now known as the Constitutional States of America. Following this, on the 12th, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania seceded. However, on the same day, the capital was recaptured, and the next following days, much of the western United States seceded from the Union. Officially, the Second American Civil War has begun.
The flag and let her fly, Yankee Doodle do or die. Pack your little kit, show your grit, do your bit. Yankee to the ranks from the towns and the tanks. Make your mother proud of you and the old red, white, and blue. Over there, send the word over there. That the Yanks are coming, but drum coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.
On September 13th, only one day after the start of the American Civil War, President Alf Landon was removed from office and replaced by Douglas MacArthur. This marks the death of the Republic and the start of the American Caesar's reign. By September 15th, the border on the East Coast stabilized. A particularly interesting area at this time was the area outside of Baltimore and the Susquehanna River. The Constitutional States of America was very keen on recrossing the river before winter and before American air power was mobilized. General George S. Patton devised a plan to cross the river and take Baltimore. However, several unexpected factors would work against him and his plan. The first factor that stood in the way of General George S. Patton's plan to recross the Susquehanna River was the American reserves held in Baltimore. Secondly, was the German SS Volunteer Division in the area, equipped with German tanks and weapons and battle-hardened from the German Civil War. Finally, the most important factor working against him was the amount of armored vehicles in the area. Constitutional States of America intelligence suggested that there were no more than a few armored vehicles in the area spread over a large front, most of which were concentrated in the north. This intelligence was incorrect, as most of the armored vehicles in the area were held in Baltimore, where they could act as a fast reaction unit reacting to any enemy attacks in a few minutes to hours. The general in charge of the American forces in this area was Courtney Hodgins. He had divided his forces into three separate parts. A small force to hold the bridge crossing the Susquehanna River to Baltimore, another small force to the north holding a major highway intersection, and finally the rest of his forces were held in Baltimore as a reserve force for the time being. This is the west bank of the Susquehanna River in Maryland, a few miles north of Baltimore. The weather for today is dark, cloudy, and rainy. A small farmhouse sits a ways back from the riverbank. On days like this, you'd expect to find the family sitting around the fireplace, listening to the radio. However, today the home is quiet, not a light on inside. Across the road, you might expect to find a cow pasture or an empty field. However, this is 1939, September 16th. Instead of a pasture or empty field, there's a military encampment. At 5:32 p.m., artillery rumbled in the distance. A few seconds later, the shells landed to meet their targets on the west bank, completely and utterly annihilating the American forces on the bank of the river. However, due to Patton wanting to keep the attack a surprise, no further artillery would be used for the remaining part of the battle, except for the mortar fighter from the American forces. Just after the artillery barrage, CAS forces moved across the bridge. The first wave consists of a light armored tank with a 50 caliber machine gun, followed by a half-track, and on either side of the bridge, CAS forces landed with aquatic assault vehicles. Fairly quickly, the assault gets bogged down at the bridge. Enemy mortar fire rips infantry apart, forcing them to take cover. The lightly armored vehicles are ripped to shreds by mortar fire and heavy MGs. Moving back to the encampment across from the farmhouse, the German SS unit has set up a Panzer III supported by a 108mm US mortar and a quad 50 cal position, and two squads of well-trained SS members. This will be a hard position for the CAS troops to take. By this point, the American units have sent out a call for aid from the reserves at Baltimore. Hearing the news of the attack, Courtney Hodgins sends out 3 Greyhounds and 3 German APCs to support their fence while the infantry and tanks mobilize to move out. However, it is imperative that the encampment hold out for at least a little while to slow down the CAS advance. The CAS troops are still bogged down at the bridge. While their light armor has arrived, their heavier M3 Lees were still en route. The infantry at this time sustained heavy losses, with some units reporting losses as high as 80%. Finally, at 5:38 p.m., the M3 Lees cross the bridge and begin to push forward. The infantry follow suit behind the tanks. By 5:40 p.m., the encampment has almost been overrun. Behind the encampment is a small checkpoint with an MG nest and a Panzer II. Behind this outpost is flat ground and the last line of defense. By 5:42 p.m., Greyhounds arrive with the German APCs following to support small outposts. However, the light Greyhounds did not stand a chance against the heavier gun and armor of the M3 Lee.
Sie schießen auf uns! Ich will, dass wir hier alle lebend rauskommen. Also Konzentration!
By 5:46 p.m., German and American light tanks show up on the scene, followed by infantry. A few minutes later, German Panzer IIIs and American M3 Lees show up. Behind them follow half-tracks bringing up the infantry. After several minutes of fighting, both sides have exhausted their resources. Burning vehicles line the countryside, along with the many wounded and dead. At 5:53 p.m., Courtney Hodgins ordered a withdrawal to the rear lines. Fortunately for Courtney, Patton's units were also on the verge of collapse. Having almost lost all of his tanks, he ordered a stop to the attack and for his tanks to withdraw later that night. He ordered the infantry to dig in. He sent them reinforcements, AT guns, and mortars. This is the end of the first battle of the Susquehanna River. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing. It would really help out the channel. Special thanks to Stormfuhrer PK for all of his amazing tutorials on the gem editor. Would not have been able to make this without those. And yeah. And if you like this video, you should probably subscribe, because here in a few weeks there will be a part 2 out, and then part 3. And then, I don't know, possibly more parts. Alright, yeah, and if you have any ideas for future content, leave them in a comment below. But yeah, thanks for watching, and enjoy your holidays.